Welcome to this explainer, where we're diving headfirst into the deeply unsettling world where those terrifying campfire tales actually cross over into documented reality. We're going to take a look at what happens when the fiction fades away and only the cold, hard facts remain. We usually just dismiss scary stories as pure fiction, right? Just silly stuff meant to frighten children or maybe cautionary tales spun by parents to keep us from wandering off. But the most unsettling doubt creeps in, that tiny little bit of uncertainty that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand straight up. When we find out these stories actually happened, suddenly it's not just some made-up tale anymore. It's something that could literally happen to any of us.
So, how exactly do these myths work? Well, to really understand the mechanics here, we need to look at the data. We've grouped 10 of the most famous, historically verified legends into specific themes. And by looking at them through this structured lens, we're going to analyze exactly how the truth gets twisted into horror, and how sometimes the horror was simply the truth all along.
Part 1. Monsters in the Woods, the Boogeyman Among Us.
Take the terrifying Staten Island legend of Cropsey. Originally, this was just meant to make kids wary of strangers. A homicidal maniac with a hook for a hand who escaped a mental asylum to drag kids back to the ruins of an old hospital. Spooky, right? But in 1972, this myth pivoted into a very real-life nightmare. The boogeyman actually became real, in the form of a man named Andre Rand. Now, he wasn't a hook-handed monster. He was actually a former janitor at a local school for mentally disabled children. And after he lost his job, he literally moved into the abandoned school. He was eventually arrested and convicted in connection with the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome named Jennifer Schweiger, and police connected him to 4 other missing children as well. The boogeyman was absolutely real. The bizarre bunnyman myth perfectly illustrates this weird chronological blur between fact and fiction. The legend claims that way back in 1904, an asylum bus crashed, and an escaped inmate began roaming the woods, hanging rabbit carcasses from trees. A classic, spooky, but totally fictional tale. But jump forward to 1970. A real couple is driving at night, and an axe is thrown straight through their car window by a man wearing a bunny suit. And it gets crazier. 2 weeks later, another guy calls the police after finding an axe-wielding man in a bunny suit chopping wood. So you gotta ask, are they linked? Did the 1904 story somehow inspire the 1970 attacker? Or did the crazy facts of 1970 just get projected backward to invent a 1904 myth? The overlap here is just staggering.
Part 2. Violations of safe spaces. Nowhere is safe.
Okay, we've all heard the body under the bed story. It's that classic gruesome traveler's tale where you check into a cheap motel, smell something absolutely awful, and find out you've been sleeping right on top of a victim. Well, this universally told tale actually manifested in reality. In 1999, Colorado police dealt with exactly this scenario when a couple slept on a mattress that literally had a body hidden inside it. And then it happened again in a highly publicized way in 2010 at a Memphis motel. Guests discovered they were sleeping directly above the body of Sony Milbrick, a woman who was a missing person at the time. Her boyfriend was later convicted of the crime. So giving your motel bed a closer inspection, yeah, that isn't just paranoia anymore. It's actually a really good idea. Now, I want you to consider the number 27. Up in the North Pond area of Maine, visitors spent 27 years feeling like they were being watched. For over 2.5 decades, flashlights, batteries, and food would just mysteriously vanish from their camping tents and cabins. People honestly thought the Earth was just swallowing things up, or maybe they were slowly losing their minds. But that eerie feeling of the Maine robber, it was completely validated. In 2013, a game warden finally discovered a man named Christopher Knight. He had been living completely alone in the woods all those years, just silently watching hikers and canoeists from the shadows. When they brought him in for questioning, he casually admitted he was responsible for around 40 robberies a year. Stealing batteries is one thing, but realizing that your nagging paranoia of being watched for 27 years was 100% accurate? Now that is a terrifying validation of our instincts. Part 3. Tragedies and City Secrets. Hidden in plain sight. Shifting gears from the isolated wilderness to bustling streets, let's look at Puebla, Mexico. For nearly half a millennium, locals whispered about secret tunnels built beneath the city by Spanish conquistadors right after the city was founded in 1531. But because no one could ever actually find them, they were just dismissed as a dark maze myth used solely to scare kids into behaving. That is, until 2014.
An urban remodeling crew was working when they accidentally stumbled upon an old tunnel. The Puebla History Center investigated and confirmed it. These were the fabled tunnels used by the Catholic Church to secretly transport treasure. The myth was quite literally a structural reality hiding right beneath their feet the whole time.
And speaking of things beneath our feet, we all know the famous New York sewer alligators myth, right? A kid flushes a pet baby gator down the toilet, and years later, a massive monster bites his arm off through a street grate. It sounds utterly crazy, but Teddy May, the city commissioner of New York during the time of the rumors, actually documented that this wasn't entirely fiction. In 1935, he and his inspectors actually did find alligators in the sewers. They were up to 2 feet long, and get this, it took a massive 2-year operation to clear them all out. 2 years! That is more than enough time for the real facts to get blurred into a monstrous urban fiction. This beautifully illustrates how everyday human tragedies transform into phantoms. Take the falling lawyer, who supposedly jumps at windows to show off. Well, in reality, a senior partner in Toronto named Gary Hoy did exactly this for visiting law students in 1993, and tragically fell from the 24th floor when the window gave way. Or consider Charlie No-Face from Pennsylvania, said to be a sickly green phantom. In truth, this was Raymond Robinson, a very friendly man who survived a horrific childhood electrocution that melted off his facial features, forcing him to walk at night just to avoid scaring people. Finally, the dog boy of Arkansas, rumored to be a werewolf ghost. The real story is way darker. Gerald Bettis, born in 1954, was a deeply disturbed local who tortured stray animals and eventually kept his own mother locked in their house until she was placed in protective custody. Often, local urban legends are really just distorted, exaggerated retellings of genuine local tragedies, accidental deaths, and very real criminals.
So far, we've looked at individuals, architecture, and tragic accidents. But what happens when we scale this up? What if the government was involved? This brings us to our final and most complex theme, bridging the gap between physical danger and psychological conspiracy.
Part 4. Conspiracies and Mind Control. The Polybius Enigma. Back in 1981, kids in Portland were supposedly addicted to a mysterious arcade game called Polybius. The legend says that whenever kids were forced off the machine, they experienced extreme nausea, stress, and even seizures. The myth quickly escalated into wild claims that men in black visited the machines weekly, copying hard drives as part of a CIA mind control program sending subliminal messages. Sounds like a sci-fi movie. But the documented reality? It's almost as strange. In 1981, there really was a kid who got physically sick during a Portland arcade marathon contest, and just days later, real federal agents really did seize a load of arcade cabinets from the area. However, the Fed stated it was just part of a major gambling bust, not mind control. So while the subliminal messaging aspect is heavily debated, the core components, a sick child and real federal agents confiscating arcade cabinets, actually happened. It leaves us with a fascinating puzzle. Did the truth inspire the myth, or is the myth a convenient cover for the truth?
So, let's wrap up what we've analyzed today. As we've seen throughout this explainer, the line between fiction and reality is incredibly thin. Human monsters like Andre Rand really do exist. Our private safe spaces absolutely can be breached, as those terrifying motel cases proved. Our modern cities literally hide forgotten historical secrets right beneath our feet, just waiting for a construction crew or a sewer inspector to uncover them. And perhaps most poignantly, fictional lore is so often born from real-world, heartbreaking tragedy, masking the very real pain of people like Raymond Robinson.
We've seen that truth and urban legends, when put together, create a narrative that is far more compelling, and honestly, way more unnerving than either one on its own. So the next time someone tells you a spooky story around a campfire, don't be so quick to brush it off as just a myth. Look a little closer, because you have to ask yourself, which part of this urban legend is actually the truth?